have the really exciting task and challenge from Mark and others to try and develop a regional Landbird migration monitoring network, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of that today. And I'm choosing to focus on landbirds for this talk, but I will recognize other efforts that are developing to monitor migration of other birds. There's the Integrated Water Bird Management Monitoring Initiative that's geared at migration ecology and management for migratory shorebirds, waterbirds, and waterfowl. And then there are other efforts for these other taxa. So in our region, we chose to really start by focusing on a landbird network. So just briefly, for those of you that are new to this, I'm going to give a quick overview of the Midwest Coordinated Bird Monitoring Partnership, and then an introduction to the Midwest Landbird Migration Monitoring Network, which is an outgrowth of our partnership, and primarily sharing with you the goals and objectives that we've developed to date, and our progress and next steps. And as Mark said, I'm going to go over the Midwest Avian Data Center and share with you the important role that I think this can play in a regional network, and then offer some closing thoughts to lead into our discussion. So, the need for coordinated bird monitoring is a good one to have, and many people originally viewed this as a problem. We have lots of programs that are up and running, we have a lot of data in the bird world, but oftentimes these are not coordinated or connected. And instead of a problem, I like to think of this as an opportunity. I think compared to other taxa, and especially other migratory taxa, we're very fortunate in the bird world to have a lot of people out studying these animals. And foundational to our regional bird monitoring partnership are these two documents, and we really use these as guidance for everything that we do. And they're a little bit out of order sequentially. The first is the opportunities for improving avian monitoring. This came out of the U.S. North American Bird Conservation Initiative's Monitoring Subcommittee in 2007. And this document really put 4 key challenges to the bird conservation and monitoring community to improve our programs and make sure that we're really providing information to conservation decision makers. And then the Northeast Coordinated Bird Monitoring Partnership, during its heyday, took the guidance in the NABC document and developed a 10-step handbook to bird monitoring, and Kim has sent that out to everyone. So you should have received a PDF of that with one of your earlier emails. Hard copies are hard to come by nowadays, but it's readily available on the web. So we looked at existing regional efforts to develop broad goals and objectives for the Midwest Coordinated Bird Monitoring Partnership. The first is that we really wanted to make sure that our monitoring was integrated with bird management and conservation, and that link that is sometimes broken is reconnected. And really to move our community forward in a way that monitoring is not an afterthought, but rather the first thought before you go out and do any work. We also wanted to broaden the scope of monitoring for species that are most at risk or for which we lack adequate information to make effective decisions. And a few examples of that that I'm very proud of have been with our secretive marsh bird working group, our nocturnal bird working group, really developing, testing, and implementing protocols to get good information on birds that are not well monitored by broad-scale programs such as the North American Breeding Bird Survey. Not surprisingly, our third goal for a regional program is to coordinate among ourselves and across spatial scales, and that's a theme that I'm hearing regularly here today. To improve survey design, field methods, and data analysis so that our data are incredibly useful, and to employ modern data management strategies, and I'll get into that in just a few moments. So how does one develop a regional network for coordinating monitoring of all birds in an 8-state region? Well, we had to start somewhere. We followed, again, the Northeast example. We developed a framework document, and that's really been guiding our development. And I would say we're moving from a fledgling partnership to a juvenile age partnership. We're still getting fed by our parents, but we're starting to take on a life of our own. We've held regular workshops every year since 2009. We took a year off this year, but we're gearing up to have a great big workshop in 2014. We have an interactive website, and very similar, I think, to what Rebecca was sharing with us. This is for the entire Coordinated Bird Monitoring Partnership, and that allows, we've got almost 400 individuals signed on to that now, and it's a way to share information, provide updates, get questions answered, connect with others, find out who's doing what where, and also a place for our regional working groups to interact and network socially and also offer their products to the world. We developed a registry of Midwest bird monitoring programs early on, and as I said, we have focused working groups and also a modern data management system. So this is just a screenshot of the Midwest Coordinated Bird Monitoring Partnerships interactive website, and this page is actually from our Midwest Migration Monitoring Network. So if you're not a member of this network page, you can go ahead and ask to join, and I'll approve your membership, and basically you can have access to the notes from our previous meetings, some literature reviews that have been done, and also access to the members that have been actively developing our network. So I'm moving on to the second theme of my talk, which are the goals and objectives that we've identified, and many of the people in this room have participated in workshops over the year to identify our goals and objectives for a network. We have a lot of energy around this topic right now. Certainly the need is there with proposed developments. And, I mean, this has been a need for a long time, but it just seems like now we've gotten some resources and some energy to really start focusing on bird migration in a coordinated way. And we've been challenged to, I'll back up. So one challenge we have within the Fish and Wildlife Services is what projects should we fund where? When we put out our small grants announcement every fall, we recognize that understanding migration ecology is a very important need. But at this point, we can't say where we need to focus effort and what techniques we should be using to address large-scale questions. So we started by identifying these questions. And the first one, and you'll see that reflected this afternoon, we felt it was really important to determine locations and site characteristics of stopover habitat throughout the entire 8-state region, such that landbirds migrating through gain rather than lose resources necessary for reproductive success and annual survival. And I'm going to blow through some of these sub-slides quickly because I think a lot of this has been covered. So to get at that question, we would need a network that would help us determine which species are present, relative abundance, consistency of use for a site. And I think some of the techniques that Mark has mentioned especially can help us understand. I mean, we can count birds and see where birds are existing, but then if we want to determine whether they're gaining or losing resources, we really need to get a hand on them and start looking at things like body condition. And I'm going to go through this quickly because I think we're going to cover this in the afternoon, and it's been mentioned this morning. But in addition to looking at how birds are using habitats and sites, also I think the attention needs to be paid to what foods or insects are available to them. Are there changes in phenology that would affect them, plants, timing of migration, and also how are local predator populations offsetting any efforts that are being done to enhance stopover habitat. So the second objective for our network is going to be to understand migratory movements through the region to address conservation challenges posed by, I would say, developmental obstacles. And this really comes out, you know, I'd never thought about airspace as habitat until I saw one of Anna's talks a few years ago. So this is really getting at that aspect of migration, making sure that we're trying to conserve airspace as much as possible and provide safe passage for birds as they're moving through our very large region. So you've heard a number of techniques this morning that I think will help us get at that. So being able to look at timing of migration and also patterns associated with migration, heights, flight distances, etc. And then I think too, being able to understand some of the demographic parameters of birds on migration. So, you know, besides body condition, getting at age and sex ratios, which proportions of the populations are moving at which times. And all of this is to help us effectively guide, where we have the opportunity, developmental decisions that could impact birds as they're moving through our airspace. And also, as I said when I asked my question of Rebecca this morning, there's a real need to establish connectivity of populations to help us look at birds across the full annual cycle and make sure that our investments in the breeding ground aren't countered by threats on the migratory or wintering grounds. And then our third objective is not a surprising one. We want an organized network of research and monitoring capacity that can be mobilized to address priority migration information needs. We want that communication in place. We want to have a mission control center where we can say, okay, this is a new threat or a new question. We need to mobilize and focus in this part of the region. That's just a really loose example. And Mark, I borrowed this from one of your earlier presentations. So, you know, here's an example. Certainly there are a lot of gaps, a lot of places that we could focus effort, right? And what we need is to do some careful planning to think about, well, where are the best places to site these different techniques, whether it's banding, whether it's point counts, radar, acoustic monitoring, right? So can we develop a way to strategically allocate those different methods across our broad landscape so that we're getting at those questions at a regional level? And that's going to be the $65 million question. Or not, because we're working on this. As Bill said in his introduction, our group of experts that have been thinking about developing our network decided last fall that we really needed to get someone on full-time or part-time for a year to really address that need of strategic planning and fleshing out what is our current capacity, how will it help us address those three objectives that I laid out for you, where are the gaps, and what is it that we need to build, in essence, that's going to help us get at these questions on a large enough scale. And I think we also need to be respectful of questions at local scales, and I think that the ability to remain flexible is going to be essential to this going forward. So the Western Great Lakes Bird and Bat Observatory put in a grant proposal, and they received it, and that's going to allow them to hire a term coordinator. And I actually have the job announcement right here, so if anyone's interested in this, or knows of a really good candidate, I'd ask you to pick up a copy. We're working with the Fish and Wildlife Service and Midwest Coordinated Bird Monitoring Partnership are working with Wiggle BBO, is that right? Is that how you pronounce the acronym? I probably just butchered that.
Wiggly Bebo.
Wiggly, I can't say that. We're working with them to get a person in place, and then over the next year, we're going to be looking for this person to conduct meetings, conference call interviews, and really go around reach out within the region and beyond the region to engage subject experts and statisticians in helping us essentially design this network from the ground up. And the product will be a plan, basically, that will outline here is what you need where to get at these questions across the region. And these are the types of approaches, this is what it's going to cost. And that way then, when we're trying to allocate funding to address information needs associated with migration and from a Fish and Wildlife Service or other agencies' perspective, we'll have something to fall back on that helps us identify where to focus our efforts.
Is that the position announcement, is that out electronically yet?
It is. I'm posting it on the website, but in the meantime I've got it, and I can, Bill or I can send that to you. I've got it on my computer.
What was the grant source?
It came from the Region 3 Migratory Bird Program through our Coordinated Bird Monitoring grants. Okay, so then the third component of my talk, and I will get this done in the next 3 minutes, is the modern data management system, okay? How many of you have heard of the Avian Knowledge Network? All right, that's great, that's really great. The Avian Knowledge Network has certainly evolved over the last 10 years, I think, and you'll see some of that reflected in my talk today, but I wanted to recognize my peers. We work on a national coordinating steering committee, rather, it's a North American steering committee because we have someone from Canada, but we're basically a group of individuals, and we represent broad partnerships and organizations that are building the Avian Knowledge Network at a large scale, and each of us is a project leader for a different regional node. So this is one way of looking at the Avian Knowledge Network. It's got a few key components. Number one, you need regional or project partnerships in place that are making those connections, that are identifying the information you have available, what the key conservation needs are, and are providing the linkages so that we're connecting monitoring data with decision makers or conservation planners. And then also, we have a distributed data management system that's built on a common schema so that we're always describing data accurately, linking like fields with like fields, and not violating assumptions when we're pooling data for analyses or queries. Quickly, these are the different nodes that are in place. Oh dear. We have one in Canada, that's Avian Knowledge Northwest, California Avian Data Center, Rocky Mountain Avian Data Center. There's a new Eastern Avian Data Center that's going to they built it for the Southeast, and they're going to expand it out for the Northeast region, and then our Midwest Avian Data Center here. And at the Partners in Flight International meeting a couple weeks ago, I gave a talk on the Avian Knowledge Network, and a lot of the Latin American partners were excited to build out a bunch of nodes in Latin America as well. The Avian Knowledge Network is not any single organization, and that's what makes this really interesting and challenging sometimes, and especially working with government agencies who are really used to one person being in charge. This is really a broad partnership, and it's a distributed network, and there are more partners in the Avian Knowledge Network than I can show on this slide. This is just a small cross-section. So one of our early goals was to develop a Midwest Avian Data Center, and we've partnered with Point Blue Conservation Science, formerly Point Reyes Bird Observatory, to develop the Midwest Avian Data Center. It's online. You can go and explore the data center anytime. And I'm just going to show you a few of the key functionalities. The Avian Knowledge Network pays very careful attention to a concept called the data lifecycle. And that really enables us to fit within the adaptive management or strategic conservation framework. So really that consists of capturing data, maintaining the data, analyzing data, and then delivering to inform conservation planning or assess management. And we have the capabilities to, so when you're capturing data, for example, you can upload a shapefile of your study area, or you can go in and digitize and identify where your points are, where you're conducting your efforts. And also we have the ability to build in online data entry portals that minimize, that are really tailored towards your protocols and can minimize errors, right? There's a lot of error checking that can be built in. So in addition to data entry and data curation, you can also do a lot to ensure data quality at this stage. And again, this bleeds into the second part of the data lifecycle, which is maintaining data. And all data have to have good metadata ascribed with them to come in, so that basically this is making sure that data are preserved over time, and all of the ancillary information that Mark was talking about that helps us understand and be able to compare apples to apples are preserved. And this slide also reminds me that there are different data sharing levels that can be set, so that if you are a researcher who's getting ready to publish, you can put your data in at a more restricted level, and then following publication you can make them more available. And I'm going to breeze through that because I'm short on time. And then the analyze phase, you can go in and develop some of your own custom analysis using our software, or there are a lot of analytical scripts already written. So maybe you don't have analytical capabilities in your office, but you've entered point count data and you want to run some simple summaries on them, whether it's trends, richness, evenness. You can go in and do some of that using the software that are available. This is just an example of an output. And then publish. And I'm just going to show a few screenshots of the different ways that data are being delivered through the Midwest Avian Data Center. One is if you want to select, this is our multi-map tool here. And these are the different data collections. And in the next few weeks, this number of data collections is going to triple, because we're going to have Black Swamp Bird Observatory's data collection in there. We're going to have a bunch of bird observatories from around Lake Michigan who've entered data through Western Great Lakes Bird and Bat Observatory. We've got Forest Service data. We've got a lot of data coming in right now. But you can click from an individual data collection. You can query by state, by bird conservation region, county, state park, whatever. And you can also look at an individual species. So I chose show me all detections of golden-winged warbler from June to July from all of these data sets, and here's what pops up. That one I'm wondering about, but it might be a later early migrant. And then you also have the capability to develop a data-driven checklist. So I just clicked on a random state park in Minnesota, and it popped up with the tally of all detections of all species from all years that there are data. You can also go in and draw a custom polygon, as I did here in Door County, and it will clip all data from within that polygon and summarize those by year or across all years. And we're working on being able to export these so that you can do more with them on your own desktop. This is an example where Phil Knott, who is formerly Institute for Bird Populations, did his own analysis on MAPS data and shared with us some of those model outputs that we've also integrated into the Midwest Avian Data Center. So researchers, analysts can also contribute and grow this. And then also you can drill in and get really good you can get good analytical outputs on BBS and other data. And again, a lot of this is being done on the fly and is available for customized query. And then finally, this is just a quick example of a histogram tool. So if you want to look at how bird occurrence changes by month in a given locale, you can do this again. You can customize which data set you're using. You can choose which species. You can look across all species. Right now, you can query by state or county, but we're building in a capability where you can query by National Wildlife Refuge or submit your own shapefile, and it'll clip out and provide you histograms of occurrence for any project area. So, here's Ryan. So it really, the Midwest Avian Data Center is being designed to support bird conservation decisions specific to the Midwest region. And my closing thoughts here, I didn't quite make it in 15 minutes, I knew I wouldn't. My advice to all of you, and I think you're already well on your way, is to coordinate locally and regionally. And I heard a lot of this today, which was really validating, but monitor with a purpose and a design. Use the Midwest Avian Data Center. We're really trying to encourage partners to take advantage of that great system and also realize the value and power of sharing and making data available to inform conservation. You're already thinking about bird needs during migration, and I just want to especially thank Kim and Sumner for your commitment to stopover habitat enhancement and coordinating monitoring along Lake Superior. And finally, these are all the organizations that have been involved in developing this Midwest Landbird Migration Monitoring Network from the ground up. Here's my contact information. I've also got cards. And again, we'll take any questions over lunch. We've got lots to discuss. Thank you. And if you're interested in helping us develop the Midwest Landbird Migration Monitoring Network, I've got outreach notices here, or job announcements here, and we can follow up after the meeting.